So let's dive into one of the most incredible political reversals in recent memory. We're talking about the story of how a powerful political bloc in Iraq got absolutely crushed in an election, and then, somehow, ended up running the entire country. How in the world did they pull that off? Let's get into it.
Right, this is the core question. It sounds completely impossible. But in Iraq, a coalition of Iran-backed militias and politicians did exactly that. And they didn't do it with a classic military coup. Oh no, their strategy was way more subtle, way more sophisticated, and it's a really chilling example of how a state can be captured from the inside out.
Okay, so let's look at the actual results from that October 2021 election. On one side, you've got the clear winner, the populist cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. His coalition bagged 73 seats. And on the other side, you've got the Iran-backed factions, the Muqawama, or resistance. Their main political group just cratered. They won only about 20 seats. I mean, this was a total, humiliating defeat for them. So what happened next wasn't a quiet phone call to concede the election, not even close. What followed was a period of complete shock, chaos, and what you can only call existential dread for these losing factions. And you can see why they were panicking. I mean, look at this collapse. In 2018, their Fatah alliance had 48 seats in parliament, a real position of power. But in 2021, that number got sliced in half. This wasn't just a political loss. For them, it was a wipeout that threatened their very survival. And here's why it was so deadly serious. Sadr didn't just win. He was very open about his plans. He wanted to form a new kind of government with his Kurdish and Sunni allies and, this is the key part, completely exclude the Iran-backed groups. Even worse for them, he explicitly threatened to break up their militias and tear down their entire power structure inside the state.
This quote from Hadi al-Amri, one of the top militia leaders. Man, it just says it all. They really saw Sadr's victory as a death sentence, not just a political loss, and they were not about to go down quietly.
So their first reaction was just pure chaos. They threw mass protests, they stormed Baghdad's super-secure government center, they were issuing death threats. The violence just kept escalating. A rocket attack on the intelligence service, and then, the most shocking move of all, a drone attack right on the home of the prime minister. It was a messy, desperate attempt to use brute force to overturn the election, and it completely failed.
Okay, so when brute force didn't work, they had to pivot. And this is where things get really interesting. The militias and their allies in Iran switched gears and launched a much smarter campaign, using political warfare and a tactic called lawfare to get what violence couldn't. So what in the world is lawfare? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like, weaponizing the legal system. It's using the courts, judges, and legal rulings as your weapon of choice, instead of tanks and guns, to achieve a strategic goal. And let me tell you, in Iraq, it was unbelievably effective. Their playbook was almost elegant in its simplicity. It had three main steps. First, get a powerful judge on your side to basically change the rules of the game. Second, put enormous pressure on Sadr's political allies, including actual military-style attacks. And third, use all that chaos to push and frustrate Sadr until he makes a huge mistake. The absolute central figure in this whole thing was Iraq's top judge, a man named Faik Zaidan. Right in the middle of all this tension, as Sadr was trying to form a government, Zaidan's court started issuing one bizarre ruling after another, each one designed to systematically chip away at Sadr's winning coalition.
And here it is. This was the killer move, the one single ruling that changed everything. See, before, you just needed a simple majority, 165 seats to form a government. Sadr had that, but the court suddenly changed the rule. Now you needed a 2/3 majority, 218 seats. All of a sudden, it was mathematically impossible for Sadr to form a government without bringing in the very people he had just defeated. He was trapped. And this is where the whole thing just unravels for Sadr. Boxed in, frustrated, unable to move, he made a catastrophic political blunder. In June 2022, he ordered all 73 of his own MPs to resign from parliament as a protest. But that didn't break the system. It just handed victory to his enemies. See, by law, their seats were just given to the second-place finishers, who, of course, were the Iran-backed factions. In one move, Sadr had just handed them the keys to the entire country. So, with their opponents literally gone from parliament, the militia coalition didn't just form a government. They started a systematic, methodical takeover of the entire Iraqi state. Every lever of power was up for grabs.
I mean, just look at the scope of this takeover. They carved up control of the National Intelligence Service. They flooded the elite U.S.-trained counterterrorism command with thousands of their own guys. They put their allies in charge of the National Security Service. And maybe most importantly, they seized control of Iraq's airports, ports, and borders. Now they controlled everything and everyone coming in and out of the country. The entire security state was theirs.
And to understand the prize they just won, you need to see this number. $152 billion. That's the size of Iraq's annual budget, the biggest in its history. And now, it was all theirs to control. Now, to put that number into perspective, because it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, just compare that $152 billion budget to Iran's other big regional proxies. You've got Lebanese Hezbollah and the Yemeni Houthis, and they're both operating with budgets of less than $2 billion. The Iraqi militias are now playing in a completely different universe. They aren't just a proxy group anymore, they're a massive economic powerhouse.
And they moved fast to make their economic power official. The new government created this state-owned company, the Muhandis General Company. Now, this thing is basically designed to be an Iraqi copy of Iran's powerful IRGC economic empire. It can get free land, no-bid government contracts. It's a tool to cement militia control over every single part of the economy.
So what's the bottom line here? What does all of this mean? Well, it means we're seeing the birth of a new, incredibly rich powerhouse in the Middle East, and that has huge implications for the entire world.
And we've already seen the consequences firsthand. After the Gaza crisis began on October 7th, these newly empowered militias kicked off a major coordinated campaign of attacks against U.S. forces. In just 2 months, they launched over 100 attacks under this new unified name, showing a level of organization and strength they just didn't have before.
So what we have now is essentially a terrorist-run state. But it's one with more money and resources than any of Iran's other proxy groups, and it's all hidden behind the official mask of a sovereign nation. It's a total capture of a country's institutions, from the courts to the economy to the military.
And that really brings us to the final, unsettling question. With absolute, unchecked control of the world's 5th largest oil producer and a budget that makes their allies and enemies jealous, what on earth is this new powerhouse going to do next?